How's it going, fam? Welcome back to Erica's EDC. Happy Wednesday. Happy Hot Moms Wednesday, if you will. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Erica's EDC. And today, we're doing a little Thanksgiving Eve video about edge breakdown. Edge breakdown, the two main types. This is going to be a video that I kind of alluded to the other day in the 15V video. I said edge holding and then I corrected myself and I was like, actually, let's call this edge breakdown and we will talk about it more in depth in another video. And this is the video, okay? This is not going to be a video for people that are seasoned veterans in the community. You're already going to know all of this. So if watching a video about something you already know really irritates you, probably turn it off. If I irritate you, me too. Also turn it off. But if you are new into knives and you are, or if you've been around for a while, but you want to understand a little more about like what's happening to your knife as you use it, maybe this video could be helpful. Because I think wording and terminology and such in the community can be a little misleading. It was to me. And we're going to talk about what edge holding actually means today, in my opinion. And by the way, these are like my opinions. And yes, I'm mentally challenged. Yes, I hate me too. All of the bad things. I know that. Okay, so when we talk about edge retention, edge longevity, edge holding, what are we actually talking about, right? Because we hear that a lot, especially with EDC knives. One of the most commonly asked questions is, how's the edge retention on such and such steel? Or how's the edge retention on such and such knife? And then when people start to talk about edge retention, it generally goes something like this. The edge holding on Rex 121 is crazy. It holds an edge for so long, or it holds that front end sharpness for such a long time that you don't have to sharpen it very often, okay? And that's wonderful that this, that steels like Rex 121 hold an edge for a long time. But the tough thing is that when you word it like that, it can be a little misleading going into your sharpening, which is the resolution for the edge breakdown, right? So when we're talking about edge holding, what we're actually talking about is the spectrum and type and level that the apex is breaking down as you use the knife, right? Because logically speaking, when you use the knife, the edge is, you cannot add anything to the edge as you're using it, right? We cannot add sharpness. We cannot add a more precise apex. Nothing is being added as we're using the knife, right? And we also can't have it stay at the same level, right? So as you're using it, again, there is no way the edge is staying exactly as it is off the stones or the system or whatever. That's not how it works. There's a level of microscopic breakdown and it can be so minute that it is basically not noticed, and that's what we're calling like really good edge holding. But realistically speaking, the only thing that's happening to the edge is it is breaking down. It's just what level. And some of it is so beyond unnoticeable that we call it, the best edge retention or the best edge holding. But the only thing that's happening on a microscopic level is the edge is indeed breaking down. It's just, how bad? How long is it taking it? What's happening is it breaks down. So now that we're talking about edge breakdown or edge deformation, whatever you want to call it, edge damage, whatever you're most comfortable calling it, what are the two types of edge breakdown? Well, generally speaking, we have toothy edge breakdown, and you'll hear this a lot, or glassy edge breakdown. And I have a number of videos on this, and if you want to understand these more in depth, go watch those videos. But essentially, there are steels that tend to have high vanadium content or high tungsten content, which will form a lot of hard vanadium carbides or hard tungsten carbides. And because they're so hard, as the edge breaks down, it's kind of microchipping more, so it'll feel sharper longer because it's technically microchipping. And then we also have steels, and these tend to be like our stainless steels especially, or low alloy. We have glassy breakdown on the other side where the edge will just start to feel like a butter knife. You can feel that there's no little microchips or anything. The edge just gets slick and buttery, and it literally feels like a butter knife, okay? So there's two different types of edge breakdown. And generally speaking, the steels that have a toothy edge breakdown are the edge holding steels, the ones that hold an edge longer, and the glassy steels tend to not have as good edge holding. So what do we do from there? Well, in order to understand how to sharpen our knives and take care of them properly and even use them properly, it's good to understand what types of carbides we're working with, because that can really guide us in the direction of the best materials to use for sharpening. So, a steel like Rex 121, this steel has, I think it's like 10% tungsten, 9.75% vanadium maybe. I know it's over 9. It's like around 9 or 10% vanadium, 10% tungsten. I think it's got 9% cobalt, okay? So this steel gets brought up to a very high hardness, and it has a lot of really hard carbides. The carbides fall on a spectrum. So iron carbides are like the softest. Chromium carbides are also very soft, and as you move up, molybdenum, tungsten, vanadium, those are really hard carbides. So when we look at Rex 121, and it's got a high percentage of tungsten, a high percentage of vanadium, it's forming a lot of really hard carbides. The edge, as you use it, is microchipping to a certain level, but also because the steel is so hard and the elements that are forming the carbides are so hard, the only thing that's really going to effectively sharpen this steel is diamonds. Because when you're sharpening, the stone that you're using has to have abrasive that is harder than the steel itself, right? So the abrasive within the stone, or if it's, electroplated on the stone or whatever, the abrasive on the stone or in the stone has to be harder than the steel itself. So the only thing that's going to effectively really remove steel on Rex 121 is, a diamond stone, okay? And that's good to know, because if you get a steel like Rex 121 or Maximate or 15V or S110V or S125V, those are all steels that respond really, really well to diamonds, because those are all steels that in one way or another need a very hard abrasive to move that steel, okay? With something like 154 CM, this steel is the complete opposite end of the spectrum. You could probably sharpen this steel on a rock. It is so easy. It's unbelievable. So I think 154 CM has like 14% chromium. I think it's 4% molybdenum. And the only elements in 154 CM, the only carbide forming elements are chromium and molybdenum. So you've got 14% chromium, 4% molybdenum, and those are the only things in the steel that are forming any type of carbide, right? So chromium carbides are soft as heck. It helps with stainlessness, so 154 CM is a little more on the stainless side. Molybdenum, not the softest carbide former, but it's not the hardest either. And there's only 4%. So 154 cm is a steel that breaks down in a very glassy manner. It gets slick really quick, but it's ridiculously easy and fun to sharpen and to polish and to strop. 154 cm is known for having like a hand rubbed finish, beautiful satin belt finish, because it polishes up so nicely. It's very like soft, and I don't necessarily mean hardness wise. It's generally not, brought up over like 60 Rockwell anyway. But my point is, working with it, you can create such a beautiful soft mirror finish on 154 cm because it doesn't have anything fighting against you. There's no vanadium, there's no tungsten, there's no cuckoo stuff. It's just a very polishy, glassy steel. So you can sharpen 154 cm on anything. And, glassy steels that also fall under this category would be like S35 VN, 440 stainless, stuff like that. They're really easy to work with, and you can sharpen them on splash and go stones, ceramic stones, soak stones, Arkansas stones, oil stones, anything that you can find. Basically, you can sharpen this knife on. It's just not going to hold an edge very long, because the compromise that you're making for ease of sharpening and maintenance and all the things is that you have no hard carbide formers in this. So it's really fun to sharpen and all of the things, but it's not going to, again, hold an edge very long, because what's actually happening is that breakdown is so glassy and soft, and it happens very quickly. So, when choosing a knife, especially as a beginner, I think the most important thing to think about is, how do I want my edge breakdown to be? What do I want that to look like? Do I want an edge that essentially feels sharp for a longer time, but in exchange for that, the sharpening is a little more picky? It will probably want diamonds, and it'll probably need some finesse. So you're getting edge longevity out of it, and you can sharpen, this is something that Sean Houston says, I think, sharpen when you sharpen when you want to, not because you have to. I believe he says something along the lines of that, which is a cool kind of quote, right? You can sharpen Rex 121 and Maximit and 15V when you want to, not because you have to, because the way that the edge breaks down is nice and toothy and coarse, and it's microchipping, and you will probably have to use diamonds to sharpen it, but at least you don't have to touch it very often, right? I wouldn't recommend these steels to people just coming into the knife scene that don't know how to sharpen, okay? But they do hold an edge very long. Or, if you're a beginner and you're just learning and you don't want to mess anything up, that's another thing I hear a lot, you may want to go with a glassier steel that has a slick, glassy breakdown. Nothing really crazy happens. Ridiculously easy to sharpen, to learn how to sharpen. The other good thing about these kind of glassier steels is that they are tougher. They have better apex stability. So as you use the knife, the chance of it chipping is very low. These have really good stability, and they tend to just roll or flatten out at the apex as opposed to chip. That's something that can happen with these higher hardness, harder carbide steels, is that they're so hard and there's so many hard carbides in there that they can be chippy if you misuse them. So essentially, these steels can be safer, especially for beginners. They're way easier to sharpen, and the edge breakdown is kind of dummy proof. There's nothing crazy happening. It just goes flat. It's like a flat tire. It just becomes toast. But it's very, very easy to get back to a hair popping edge. So, for people coming into the community, or that just want to understand their edges better if they're a little confused. Sometimes thinking of it as a negative thing is actually better, because when we start to talk about edge longevity or edge holding, it doesn't quite make sense, because that's not actually what's happening. There is breakdown regardless of how incredible the steel is, how hard it is, how thin it is, whatever. There is breakdown. It's just on a spectrum. It depends on how long it takes to break down. And depending on what you want to work with in terms of the aftermath of the breakdown, if that can really help you decide on what steel you want or what knife you want. Because if you're someone that wants the edge to, stay toothy for a long time, and you're totally fine investing in diamonds, and you're totally fine taking that extra time and finesse to work with the edge, absolutely go for a super steel like this. 100%. This will be way more like hassle-free in terms of edge maintenance. But if you want ease of sharpening and you're still learning and you're a little spooked about maybe, hitting staples in your EDC work, or nails, or pallet straps that have the metal the metal support, or anything like that, you may want to go with one of those kind of glassier breakdown steels. So I really suggest looking at the composition. Don't type in on the internet, what is the composition of CPM Rex 121, and look at the first thing that comes up, because it's generally some sort of AI generated like chat GPT thing, and it's typically wrong. What I would do is type in, CPM Rex 121 composition, and then go to an actual legit website, whether it's a steel dealership website like Alpha Knife Supply or Niagara Specialty Metals. They have to have like the legit analysis, because they're selling that steel. So those are great places to look. There's something called Z Knives. There's an app and a website that Gabe from the Home Slice told me about, and it's awesome. You can just go to zknives.com and type in the steel, and it gives you a legit guaranteed analysis. Don't just do like Wikipedia or the first thing that pops up on the interwebs. Go to a legit source and look at the composition. From there, try to keep in your memory that tungsten carbide, vanadium carbide, those are the most common, really, really hard carbides. So if a steel has a lot of vanadium or a lot of tungsten or a lot of both, generally that steel is forming a lot of hard carbides, and it's going to respond best to diamonds, and generally will have a more toothy edge breakdown that lasts longer. If you type in ABL composition, Nitro V, 14C28N, those are basically all the same thing, 154CM, S35VN, those are all steels that have a little more of a glassy breakdown. They are very tough at the apex. They at most will roll. It's very rare that you get any of those steels to chip. They're very glassy, and they're kind of flirty. They're kind of just like, they're just there for like a good time. Nothing crazy is happening. They're not ghosting you. They're not taking off with your mom. It's just like a nice, slick, glassy breakdown. Nice and easy. No hassle. And then when you go to sharpen it, you can use any dang thing you want. Truly. And that edge will come right back up. Won't hold it as long, but just so easy to work with. So when choosing an EDC steel, really think about the breakdown. And again, we're thinking in a more negative mindset, but it ends up really actually helping, because edge holding isn't quite a thing. And I would just suggest, looking at what you do in your everyday. I will say, generally speaking, These glassier steels are really good for woodwork and kitchen settings, okay? Because again, the way that the edge breaks down is very slick, and it tends to happen a little faster. So in the kitchen, not that big of a deal, because you kind of want that apex stability and apex toughness in a kitchen environment, because a lot of people are doing repetitive kind of like chopping and cutting, and you could be breaking down rotisserie chickens or turkeys or duck and, you know, cutting through all types of stuff. So a lot of people really like kitchen knives to be in 14C or AEBL, right? That's very common. Nitro V, all those steels have really, really good apex stability. Same with woodwork. Wood is not abrasive. So if you are literally just carving feather sticks, you know, carving soft wood, not doing anything crazy, you know, making little bonfires and stuff. Again, ABL, Nitro V, 14C, 154 cm, CPM 154. It's nearly the same thing. It's just the powder metallurgy version. 440 stainless, all of those, S35, they're all great for outdoors because they're really easy to work with. And with wood, if you're not doing anything crazy, it's not abrasive, so you can manage those kind of glassier steels outside. That's why we see outdoors knives made in those steels. Or even if we go into the low alloy category, 80 CRV2, 8670, 5160. Do they have good edge retention? Absolutely not. But what they do have is incredible toughness, and the apex stability that you get in those is really nice. So they're so easy to sharpen. They don't hold an edge as long, but nothing happens to them as you're using them. So especially in the low alloy class, if you're outside carving feather sticks and making little traps and spears or whatever, campfire sticks to roast marshmallows, if you think that maybe you could be a little clumsy, especially like I am, and you may like slip on the ground while you're carving and go into the soil or hit a rock or whatever, think about that. Think about the negativities. Think about what's going to happen as I use this knife. Because if you think that you could be a little clumsy outside while you're carving, you may want to go with one of those low alloy steels that has really high toughness. Again, not the best edge retention, but great toughness, and nothing happens to that edge if you accidentally hit a rock or hit fat wood or stab it into the soil on accident. I've done it 100 times. That's where those steels really, really shine, okay? The low alloy class and a lot of stainless steels. But if you're looking for something that's going to cut rope and zip ties and straps and paracord and deer hide, if you're looking for something that's going to cut those things for a long time and still feel toothy, that's where you want to look into the steels that are a little more like this. And we do not have to be as dramatic as Rex 121. That's probably not your best bet for all of those tasks. But leaning more toward this side of the spectrum, toothier edge breakdown, Crewwear, 10V, K390, those are steels that, 15V, those are steels that work really, really well when you want your edge to feel toothy longer and you're not worried about apex stability and toughness as much. You just want the dang thing to cut for as long as possible, and you don't care about how long it's going to take to sharpen out those little microchips or whatever. If you're not worried about toughness, go with something that has a more toothy edge breakdown. You'll thank me later. So look at the composition, okay? Tungsten and vanadium, very, very hard. Everything else, not so much. And not every element forms carbide, okay? There's going to be other things that are sprinkled into steels. There can be silicon, manganese, cobalt, carbon, right? Not all of the elements form carbide. There's only a few, and you can look that up too. That's a great thing to look up, is carbide forming elements. It will give you a little chart. Like I said, I believe iron is the softest, and it goes all the way down to like tungsten, vanadium, all of the things. Niobium, there's another one. There's a whole spectrum. Okay, so really good things to think about when you're choosing a knife and choosing a steel. How do I want my edge to break down? And what am I most comfortable working with when it is broken? And we're not literally talking about broken, snapped in half. We're talking about that apex being broken to some sort of level. How do I want to work with that? That's the best way to pick an EDC steel, right? I hope that this was helpful and informative for you guys. It's something that I wish I knew way back when I was picking knives, because a lot of people go through knives and they've heard on the internet that it's the best steel, the edge lasts so long, but sometimes you get it and you're like, I have no idea how to work with this thing. What the heck? Like, I'm used to sharpening on grandpa's oil stone where you spit on it and you just, oh my God, I was about to say you spit on it and go, and I'm like, please don't say that. Please don't say that. But you know what I'm saying? Like the old school Arkansas stones where you can use your spit as a lubricant, or water or oil or WD-40. Like, if that's what you're used to, and you heard through the internet and through YouTube that 15V is the best EDC steel, or Rex 121 is the best edge holding steel, or K390 is going to be your best friend. If you're used to grandpa's workshop materials, wish I could talk, you're not going to have a good time, and you're going to be very, very disappointed when you go to sharpen your 15V on, you know, an old Arkansas stone, and you're like, this ain't doing shit. What the hell? The interwebs told me this was the best dang thing since sliced bread. Since beer battered moms. Okay? Please let me know if this was informative. Let me know if you have any other questions, but I hope that helped you guys with your next purchase of steel or knives or what have you. I will see you guys on the next video. With that all being said, go use your shit. Learn how to sharpen your knives. I'll see you guys on the next video. I love you so much, fam. Take care and happy Thanksgiving. I love you guys so much.